reporting live from the Norfolk Airport. All things TSA, real ID, facts, true or false? No, where am I? I'm in Norfolk at the airport because I had to bring my daughter up here to catch a flight. And we had a teensy bit of a problem because, well, this is sort of the backstory. So the current law is that children, if you are under the age of 18, you can fly with no ID. Very important. So if you are 0 to 2, you can share a seat with your parent or guardian. So you do not have to buy an extra airline ticket if you have an under 2-year-old. Now, if you're flying alone and you had twins that were 1.5, you cannot put both of them in your lap. You can only have one. So you would have to buy 2 seats for 3 people, and so on. If your age is 3 to 14, and you have to fly on American as an unaccompanied minor if you are not with a parent. Actually, 3-year-olds can't fly alone. So if you have a 14-year-old and you think the 14-year-old doesn't need an adult, well, they have to have one. So you have to pay $150. Unless they fly with an older sibling, then you're fine. And the sibling has to be 18 or 16. Now, the gray area is if you are 15, you can fly alone, which is great. If you're on a train, you cannot travel alone on a train at 15. You have to have a parent. Well, you can. A parent has to drop you off. This is when you have a lot of children traveling alone. A parent has to drop you off and wait and then pick you up. That's on a train. You do not need an ID on a train. So you feasibly could say, I'm 16, and nobody would know the better. Now, I'm not advising that. I'm just telling you that's reality. So today I was bringing my 15-year-old, taking my 15-year-old to the airport, and I was trying to check her in, and it kept saying flying as an unaccompanied minor. And I was like, no, she's not. Because that would mean that I had paid $150 for someone to escort her on the plane, which I did not because 1, I'm cheap, and 2, it's unnecessary. So it was a mistake in the American Airlines system. So it was not allowing me to check her in ahead of time. So we got to the airport and we waited in line. And when we got up to the desk, the lady said, well, does she have an ID? And I said, no, she's 15. She doesn't legally have to have an ID. And maybe that sentence annoyed someone. And she was like, well, she will on the 7th. I was like, well, it's not the 7th, it's the 4th. And she was like, well, now you're too late. You have to check in 42 minutes ahead, and it's 41 minutes. So sorry, you're not going to be able to get on the plane. There are going to be people that are like, you hate the rules. I don't hate the rules. But if you hadn't been arguing with me about something where you were wrong, I would have been in the 42-minute window, which I didn't even know was a thing. But if I had been able to check in online, which I should have been able to do, then it wouldn't have been a problem. So I feel sure that American Airlines is going to say, oh, we're sorry. We don't know why the system did that. That wasn't your fault. Blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we have to wait for a supervisor. While we're waiting for a supervisor, we talked to another woman. And these 2 women, now Miss Lily at American in Norfolk is delightful. The TSA agents in Norfolk are delightful. But there are 2 women at the American airline counter, and they decided they were going to die on a hill with me. And the hill they died on was that starting on May 7th, all children will have to have a photo ID if they have a seat. What you talking about, Willis? That is not true. So I pointed out that because, we were waiting for the supervisor who they said was in the bathroom, which seemed inappropriate. But I said, according to TSA, children are not going to have an ID. well, you're wrong and we're right. And that's how it is. And the law has changed and it starts on the 7th. It has not. So we get Blair on a standby flight. Now she's standby. She misses her flight, right? Because of the error of saying she's an unaccompanied minor, because she's not. So I go and talk to the TSA guy down here, and I said, tell me something. He was like, absolutely not. Children do not have to have IDs. The new law, which is called the Real ID law, was passed by Congress in 2004, was signed into law by George Bush in 2005. It has finally become a law. And what that means is that if you have a driver's license, your driver's license should have a star in the corner, and that means it's a real ID. However, if you don't have a real ID, which is a driver's license with a star, meaning that basically you showed your social security card when you got your license. The reason they did this was they decided that after 9/11, it was too easy to get a driver's license and that was not going to work any longer. So they wanted to make it harder to get a driver's license, which I'm not against necessarily. But you can also fly with a passport or a passport ID card. Now, a little known fact about this new Real ID law is that you can fly with an expired license with a star or an expired passport domestically if it's only been expired less than 2 years. I just checked that on the website. So if you have a passport and it expired in 2024, you can fly with that domestically. But it's the 4th. I know. Bonnie, this was a deep, dark hole that we went down while we were waiting for the supervisor to come out of the bathroom when she was arguing with me about why Blair needed an ID. And I said Blair did not need an ID. And she said that she did. And I said, so babies have to have IDs? And she said, no. Babies don't have to have IDs because they don't have their own seats. And I said, what about 7-year-olds? And she was like, yes, 7-year-olds have to have a photo ID. It's like, no, they don't. So if you get to the airport and you go to the American Airlines desk and you're in Norfolk, you need to ask to see Miss Lily. Make sure Miss Lily is in charge. If one of the gate agents, of which there are 2 currently, tell you that your child has to have an ID, what you should do is don't argue because they will, put you on the do not fly list. Walk your fanny over to the TSA agent and explain to them calmly, the American Airlines agent has said that my 7-year-old needs a photo ID. What should I do? The TSA agent will walk with you over to the American Airlines desk and they will explain that they are wrong. That is the best thing to do. Just for the record, do not wait for a supervisor. It might be easier for her to use her passport. So Heather, the problem with letting children fly with their passport is that my children have a tendency to lose things. So I don't want my children taking a passport with them to fly because a lost passport is a huge pain in the ass to deal with, and passports are very expensive. So there you have it. But again, if you are under the age of 18, 17, 16, 15, when your child gets to the airport, the agent always will say, let me see your ID. You can either show like your Mickey Mouse Club card, your Lego driver's license, a school ID, or you can say, I don't have an ID. And by law, I'm not required to have an ID. My children say I'm a Karen, but I'm not a Karen. Like when they were telling me 7-year-olds had to have photo IDs, I was like, holy shitoli, this is a really big deal. Like, why isn't this? And I said to one, like, why isn't this like on the national news? Like, you would think you would be hearing about the fact that starting on Wednesday, every child was going to have a photo ID in the airport. Like, I kind of keep my nose to the ground of stories. The reason you haven't heard that is because it is not true. Yes, she has a school ID. It's not the point is that the law is where we should follow. We follow the law. So you can't just make up shit and tell people they have to do it. It's important. So yes, so now here's where I am. Blair is Mr. Flight. I'm sitting here at the airport because American made a mistake and said that she was an unaccompanied minor. She was not. But we were unable to check in because of that mistake until we got to the airport. We got to the airport 45 minutes in advance, which was plenty of time. But we didn't get to the counter until 41 minutes instead of 42 minutes. So we missed our flight. And we didn't do anything wrong. If we'd been able to check in online, which we should have been, you could get to the airport 15 minutes ahead. It's a very small airport. It takes 9 minutes from the doorway to the gate in this airport. You must have fatigue. I'm tired. I have been, in the last 6 nights, I have slept in 5 different beds. You made her mad, so she pulled rank. Ding, ding, ding. Dingy, ding, ding, ding. And I wrote a nice post about American Airlines. Like, I'm an executive platinum member. Like, I am good. But why is it that people that work in bookstores and that people that work at airlines feel a need to die on hills that don't make sense? If she's a minor and flying alone, doesn't that make her an unaccompanied minor? No, it doesn't, Karen. Oh, no, you're Heather. Heather, an unaccompanied minor is a classification of a child that is flying alone that the parent has opted in for the unaccompanied minor service. You see? It's different because you pay $150 for a child to fly and be escorted by someone. Was Blair mad? Blair was not mad. Blair was crying, though, for a teensy bit. But she was sort of fake crying. And then she said, I'm not going to be able to go to the funeral because she was trying to get on the flight, which is always necessary. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Kiss my ass. You can draw more flies with honey than with vinegar. Cheryl, I go find somebody else to troll. The real ID law is until May 7th. I know, but the people were arguing with me when I said Blair didn't have an ID and didn't need an ID because that's the law. That then the argument started into that she was going to have an ID by Wednesday, which again is not true. But the supervisor, Miss Lily, was like, once she came out of the bathroom in lunch, she was like, no, she doesn't need an ID. No, she doesn't. No ID. Thank you, Miss Lily. It was not Miss Lily's fault or anybody's fault that it said she was an unaccompanied member. I don't know where that came from. Thank you, Cheryl. Sometimes it just seems like things in life could be easy. Like, she's right here, 41 minutes, 42 minutes. The supervisor, once she came out of the lunch in the bathroom, she called down there and the guy said, oh, we've already given her seat away. So if somebody would have taken the second to say, like, let me call down there and see if it's okay since it's 1 minute, she could have put her on the flight. But sometimes people get on power trips. Why not show her passport? Because we didn't bring her passport. No. I don't just drag people's passports around. You know, I'm thankful that now she's on the next flight. Did the American counter apologize to you? The manager, Miss Lily, was very nice to me. Very nice. Yes, she's on standby now. And Blair says she's getting on the plane, but I told her I would not leave until the plane started moving, just in case something happened, because then I would have to drive back here. So if you don't have a real ID and you have a passport and you're flying out on Wednesday, you are good. You can fly with the passport. If you don't have a real ID and you have an expired passport, you can fly with the expired passport as long as it's less than 2 years old. If you have a real ID and it's expired, you can fly with the expired real ID for 2 years. What did the people say that workers act? Well, one worker was way down at the end and the other worker was right beside her. And because I'm a pain in the ass, I said, Miss Lily, she told me that children were going to have real IDs. And the woman was like, well, that's what they told us. I was like, no. You told me that a 7-year-old was going to have a photo ID on Wednesday, and you're wrong. Miss Lily, do you have to have a photo ID? She was like, no. She goes, well, that's what I read. I was like, yeah, but you can't kick people off flights because that's what you read, right? Mary Sutton said, you are a money grubber with your son. Hope he finds his way without being published. 6'6". Your degrees don't hold shit for this, from Raleigh. Mary Sutton. Pucker up, Buttercup. You're from Raleigh. Let me guess, Mary Sutton, you either have a dog or a plant as your profile picture, because that's what people do that talk like that. I just wrote a book. It was a New York Times bestseller. So if I was a money grubber because I had an Amos, that would mean that all mothers of children with autism, of which there are 1 in 31 children now, would have New York Times bestsellers. You ought to go get a job at the airline desk. I mean, I would love to run into people that hide behind the internet. So the problem is Mary Sutton is probably in her 60s and she's blonde. And maybe she was even a debutante and she's pissed. She's pissed and she has a child with a disability. And she's pissed because she has suffered alone for years. And here I am on Facebook and she thinks I'm getting rich. And she doesn't know that every time she comments, I make $1. $1 darn dollar. No, I used to. I don't anymore. Used to really make good money on videos. Now I make nothing. Literally now, when I do videos, I make like I'm not kidding you, 4 cents. The only way I make money now on Facebook is I have a paid subscriber group. Now, speaking of money grubber, this doesn't have anything to do with Amos. This is a money grubber off myself. If you are watching this video and you need daily fun talk, come over and be a subscriber. It's $10 a month on Facebook and $5 a month on YouTube. And this morning, my husband and I did a 30-minute fun coffee chat together, which is great because he has been a nurse all week and to his dad. And so he was like dying to not have to watch Fox News and sit and talk to me about work. And what else did we talk about? Bill Belichick. We talked about him, who he said is not recruiting as well as he thought. He's doing okay with the transfer portal. And then we talked about why hearing aids make this sound when you hold them in one hand. And how that sound is, to me, Thomas, feels like if you went to hell, that's what you'd have. So yeah, I'm a money grubber off myself. Come be a subscriber. Anyway, her flight leaves in 8 minutes. It was a great coffee chat. I know, I have a really good husband. Yesterday he went windsurfing and, you don't need to just defend yourself. The anger will eat you alive. Well, I'm not angry. Your mother loved the book. She said it will help people understand more about autism. Oh, that's nice. You know, I think it's a good book. I don't think Amos, I don't think if it was really a money grubber book, it was 49 minutes. I don't think if the book was about money, I would have had to work so hard on it. Yes, my father-in-law watches Fox News. And if you think I can do anything about that, Sarah, he's 90 and I'm done. I mean, if somebody wants to watch Fox News on DEFCON 9, then I don't know what to tell them. I'm not trying to teach a 90-year-old new tricks. No, I'm not. Thomas is very tan. Well, he's very tan because yesterday he spent an extreme amount of time on a windsurfing board. He windsurfed from the Albemarle Sound to the Alligator River. If it's a real ID, it has a yellow star in the top right. That's right. So I didn't know that. And I flew with Grandpa like a week ago. And Grandpa's license, they said, you need a real ID. And I was like, holy cow, I didn't know it was a real ID. But TSA is saying, I asked the TSA guy, they're not going to like immediately necessarily not let you fly, but they might put you through some additional question making. There's going to be like this period of gray land where they might let you through anyway without a real ID if you have some other forms of identification. But I would not fly on purpose without a real ID. So again, and you could share this video if you think this is helpful information. If you have a real ID and it is expired, less than 2 years, you can fly with it starting on May 7th. If you have a passport and it is expired, you can fly with it as long as it's been expired less than 2 years on May 7th. If you have a regular real ID, this is what you're supposed to have. If you have a passport, you can always fly with a passport. You never, ever have to get a real ID. Ever. Never. So did everybody get that? If you have a birth certificate, that does not count as anything. Nothing. Do not show up at the airport with a social security card or a birth certificate unless you also have a photo ID. And you may or may not be able to get on the plane. Oh, yay. This is not an argument about Fox News. I don't fucking care what people watch. But I'm just not going to argue with somebody that's 90 about what they're watching. I prefer to watch Dateline. If people watch TV, I'm real glad that they're watching TV. Yes, I will be flying again a week from Wednesday, heading to Austin, Texas, and then driving to San Antonio, and then flying back to Raleigh, and then flying to Pittsburgh to be in Ohio. Did they mention having a military ID in place of a real ID? No, Kieran, I did not see that online. My driver's license had a star, but wasn't a real ID. The real ID in Texas, well, according to the TSA website, real IDs have stars. You have a real ID and you haven't flown since 1987. Well, that's good. Yes. So when you go to get a new license and you think, I'm not going to fly, take your social security card in there, 2 forms of identification, and get yourself a real ID. Because what if you win a cruise on The Price is Right? You're going to want to be able to fly, especially if you don't have a passport. I didn't mean to use that word. Didn't I just whisper it? Military ID works, said Shelby. Okay, well, I don't feel like I can say that it works because I don't know it for myself. Yeah. It was extended. So the law was passed by Congress in 2004 and then signed by George Bush in 2005. But there was a lot of fighting against it because they said it was going to cost $12 billion, I guess, for people to go get new licenses. But really, your license would have expired. It's not any more expensive to get a real ID. You just have to have more mess on it. Photo ID name must match birth certificate. If you change your married name on your license, you are SOL. You must have a passport. Changed your married name. I don't know what all that means. So I changed my name, my legal name. Photo ID name must match birth certificate. No, that's not true, Kathy. My photo ID is Adrian Harold Wood, and my birth certificate is Adrian Thorpe Harold. But my social security card says Adrian Harold Wood. I guess they changed that, you know? If you've been married or divorced, you must have certificates. Well, yes, that is true. You have a passport from 1999. I think it's expired by now. So if it has expired less than 2 years, you can use it. If it's expired more than 2 years, you cannot use it. You need your marriage license to get a real ID. Oh, you're right. Yes, I did have to take my marriage license, which showed the name changing. It's a lot. I went to the DMV, I don't know, like 3 times this summer because some people in my family struggle to pass the driver's test. And when you get your child's driver's permit, you really are going to hate that because you have to get a certificate from the high school. You should take even like your birth control prescription. Take everything you own in there. If the passport is expired, you can still fly domestic, but not overseas. That's right, Tina. If it's expired less than 2 years, you can fly domestic with it. Hubby cannot get an ID to fly. Born at home, the mother never got a birth certificate. Fought for our country. He is 86. Does he have a passport, Marge? So he could fly with a passport. I would assume that he had to go overseas, right? That's very interesting. I love all these people knowing all this stuff. Aren't passports 10 years? I don't know. I do know that you cannot fly with a passport internationally if it is gonna expire within 6 months. Isn't that crazy? So you have a passport, it's basically invalid to fly if it's gonna expire in 6 months. It's nuts. Okay, I think she's taken off. This is just like a little information. You might get more somewhere else. Okay, now I'm driving home because I got to go home and get Amos ready for the week. Goodbye. Become a subscriber if you need fun.